Knittergy. I'm in Valgros, and I'm the designer behind the Knit of the Dragon.
I'm Jenn. I'm the designer behind Synapticstitches.
I am Nikko. I'm broadcasting from Vogue Knitting, Seattle.
I'm Scott Strong-Wallace. I am the dyer behind Mount Carmel Yarns.
So this is the 6th episode, and last episode we dived into the spring festivals, and our challenge was to make masks, and let's see what we made. So who wants to start? Do you want me to start? I'll start.
Sure.
I never start. Okay. So we had the colors, and the colors that I chose were a monochromatic palette. And I chose the green because it was spring and, you know, the growth and everything is green. So I went for green. And my idea, oh my God, I don't have the sketch here. So my idea was to use the cracks. We had some motifs that we had to use. So one of them was the sprouts. I knew I want to use the sprouts. And one of them was the cracks, the egg cracks. So I knew I wanted the mask to crack or something. Then I thought that I wanted something like that shows the growth, and, you know, and I wanted to use in my materials. We had some added materials we needed to use, and I wanted to use the soil. And it's going to be very messy. So
I've been waiting to see how someone was going to interpret this. I was hoping you would pick soil because I had no idea how that was going to work.
yeah, I knew I want to put the soil.
All right, so Inbal, before you put your mask on, turn your camera off, and then put your mask on, and then come back, and then you'll turn on your camera, and there it'll be.
Okay, wait for it. Okay, I put it in a plastic bag because it's just very messy, seriously. But I don't know if you can even see the dirt, except on my desk. Okay,
Literal dirt.
3, 2, 1. So.
Wow.
It's pretty cute.
Oh my God, like you were short on time and then you do that.
It was
Yes, it was like, when did you do this in 2 days? Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I will tell you how I did it because it's interesting, because I knew I wanted the mask. I knew I wanted it to have the roots, which has dirt in them. And I knew that I wanted the cracks. So I had to have like live stitches on the top and on the bottom. So I can knit up and then I can knit down. So I started with, and I have this one. So I started with a provisional cast, the crochet provisional cast on to have the stitches live later on for the roots. And I started knitting it flat and just adding stitches here, and then I connected it to be in the round, and here I just bound off some stitches and then added them like you do with a buttonhole, but a large buttonhole. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I tried to, you know, measure my measurements and figure out, like with a gauge, how many stitches I need. And then I just knitted in the round, like this part was, I think, 2 pulls of yarn, and then knitted in the round. And then I just did it in sections. I had a 3rd needle, so all the stitches were on my needle, and I just knitted back and forth and just reduced each section separately. Then I went down and I just made the roots. Some of it I just alternated between knit and crochet all the time. And then I picked up stitches here with a crochet hook, and then I knitted the cute flowers. And I know that I didn't, I wasn't supposed to put color, but I couldn't. It was just too sad. So I added duplicate stitch. Your duplicate stitches here.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
I had to some color. And the sprouts were just, I saw them at the end.
Impressive.
That's really cool.
So that's my spring mask. Yeah.
Okay, who wants to follow that?
No one. I can go and bring the standard back down a little. You want me to turn my camera off? Then...
Yes.
Yeah. That way we have the reveal. It's fun.
Okay.
It's so hot. Oh my god. I'm gonna put some music here.
You can crop it out. It'll, or you know.
Yeah. You can just crop this part.
Yeah.
Flip it. It'll be shorter. All right.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, that's cute.
So, I sort of originally thought Mardi Gras colors with purple and green and gold, but my philosophy with doing this has been I'm not buying yarn for these projects. I've been doing everything with stash. So I happen to have these pink and green, and I was like, okay, well, it's bright colors, it still goes together. So I knit the base of the mask in the purple. And of course I did not weave in any ends. And it definitely would, like, I did the same thing you did of like trying to estimate gauge and measurements, and it would fit better if it like had a wire and fit over the nose a little bit more.
I had the same problem, but I just bended it a bit inside and sewed it inside.
Oh yeah, that would
open
work.
It up a little bit.
Yeah. And then it's got like these little things. I was inspired by the idea of putting leaves. So you put dirt, and then the other thing you suggested was feathers. So I thought sort of brioche texture looks like feathers. So I put like little different brioche feathery on there. And I made it, I didn't knit it all the way around my head. I just did ties on the four corners of it. And I knit one in I-cord as my cast on, or my bind off tail. And then I remembered how tedious doing like 10 inches of I-cord is. And then for the rest of them, I just like looped yarn through and braided it and was done.
It's very nice.
Thank you.
You look kind of similar from each other, Campbell and Jenn.
Yeah,
there's some similarities.
Kind of springy.
Theme there.
Okay, Scott, I think it's your turn.
All right.
Oh no, we switched places. So now I'm gonna have to switch the names. Okay, Jenn, from 1 to 10, how stupid do you feel right now?
I'm pretty well up there, yeah. 8. What about you?
Okay. All right, here we go.
That is awesome.
That is so scary.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is actually a pattern by Anne-Marie Dunbar called the Boca Clapa. It's inspired by a character from Doctor Who. My colors, although I didn't finish it because it started getting fiddly around the ears, and you know how I feel about fiddly knitting, I just stopped. So I added some extra stuff, and I added some twigs for horns.
Wow.
My colors were inspired by holly, and
Yeah.
So I dyed up a skein of yarn in those holly colors. And yeah, so there it is. Here's a little tongue.
Wow.
Has some forehead sort of horn type things that stick out there.
Ah, that's good. Very creepy though.
Yeah, I think anyone who's afraid of
Yeah.
clowns, don't watch
Yeah,
this.
yeah. It's a
Exactly. Here we go.
very scary clown kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, my hands are coming off.
You look like a serial killer in a horror film.
But very festive one.
Yes, exactly. Very festive.
He's like hopping his way to murder some people.
So I picked the holy colors. So there's a lot of pink and yellow and bright colors. And I picked the egg shape with a crack in the middle. And when I thought of crack, I was thinking maybe something should ooze out from the crack. So I was initially thinking feathers, but then I thought of feather, maybe cat toy. And I had this art yarn or novelty yarn that's made from old clothes. And I didn't know what to do with that yarn. So I just used that as like a kind of volcano lava oozing out from the crack of the egg. And I made a cat toy out of it. So I took a video of myself playing with my cat. She was a little bit scared. She didn't know how to react to the cat to the toy at first, but yeah, I kept encouraging her to be excited in front of the camera. I did have a pattern from my friend Amy Michelle Reeder. She had a balaclava frog pattern with a zipper in the middle. So I used that as a reference. I used the same structure, but did my own improvisation. Oh, and I took a zipper sewing class from an instructor called Ann Burke a few years ago, but I never played with zippers much. So this gave me an opportunity to place the zipper right here.
How cool is
So
that?
that's it.
Yeah, I love it. This is one of my favorite challenges, I think. Especially this when I see the screen. Okay, so now for the episode. And we're in April, and the episode this month is for the spring clean. So I don't know how it's like over there, but here in Israel, we have the spring clean like for Pesach. We have Pesach and like people go and really clean the house and the refrigerators. And funny thing that I want to mention is that this is the period in Israel where all the desert sand starts to come with the storm. So right when you finish to clean the house, that's when all the sand and dust comes. So I don't get it doesn't make any sense to me, the timing here, but that's how we do the spring clean. So how is it where you live?
Well, okay, so being Jewish, I, of course, spring clean at this time of year as well, because we have to get rid of all leavened foods out of the house. So we clean all of our cupboards in the kitchen. So it's like, well, while we're cleaning, might as well do everything else. So we do this as an opportunity to, freshen everything up, find the things that no longer have purpose and get rid of them, to make room for something new. I know around where I live, this is often when you start seeing yard sales come up.
What is Pesach? Is it Passover?
Yeah.
Yes, that's Hebrew for Passover.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we don't have yard sales, although it always looks so cool to go.
Yeah, go from house to house, neighborhood to neighborhood, buying their old stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love like vintage stuff and old stuff and old people stuff. It's always interesting when it's not yours, right?
Spring cleaning is a new concept I learned after I moved to the US, because I don't think there's that concept in Japan. We usually do major cleaning at the end of the year, like December 31st, before the New Year's, so that when the year changes to a new year, we start the new year with fresh, clean place. But like I mentioned in the previous episode, April is when the school year starts and the fiscal year starts. So there is some concept of starting new, fresh, and cleaning out like the school stuff from the previous year and get new textbooks. So there is some kind of a concept of renewal and cleaning up. So it's kind of a natural thing for me to understand.
I feel like I haven't had a super strong tradition. Like I've known about the concept of spring cleaning, but it's not been like a big tradition in my household or anything like that. So I feel like the thing that's resonating with me right now is we're moving this summer, and we have moved many summers, bouncing around between cities. And so often springtime is, get rid of the things that I don't want to move to our next home and clean up and pack and organize. So I've just started that process in the last week, because we know we're going to be moving again this summer. So it's always for us between academic years.
And it's a lot of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
To move. So we have the cleaning of the house, and we also have cleaning of our stash. Do you have like sort of stash cleaning?
Nope.
Just last week, someone in the group, the knitting group, said that she had a bag of a lot of scraps, and she just threw it away because she couldn't stand that it's there anymore. And everyone was like, what? You threw it? It's like worse than throwing out food, It's like, what? Yarn?
I actually inherited a few bags of half-used stash from a friend of mine. Hi, Kevin. Obviously, he was doing spring cleaning and gave me all the leftover yarns from previous projects that he didn't need. And there were some good yarns too, like Brooklyn tweed and nice variegated sock yarn. So I'm accumulating stash, thanks to Kevin. And for me, stash cleaning is swatching. By swatching, I try to use leftover yarn and I get to practice new stitch pattern or explore inspiration. So that's how I try to clean up my stash.
I feel like for me, cleaning up stash means more organizing rather than getting rid of. Like I try and use my stash a lot, but I feel like for me, cleaning is like, okay, it's all in a giant pile in a basket, and now let's, sort it out in some way so that I can have, see what I have and know what I can work with out of my stash.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I haven't gotten to the point yet of feeling I need to downsize my stash. I'm enjoying too much building it up, but keeping it organized is a challenge. Right now, all I have is my big set, my IKEA shelves. So I have a feeling I need to get a larger Kallax shelf to be able to start housing more of my yarn. But yeah, for me, it's been more about that. But I do have a lot of bits and bobs of leftover yarn and storing that is starting to become a challenge. So I need to start figuring different patterns to use those on.
Yeah. And
Yeah, like I do a lot of, my swatching or, planning out design ideas with just scraps from stash. I've been doing all my projects for this with leftover bits from stash. So it's been nice to have like a big variety of things when, okay, all I know is I need to do a 6x6 swatch. I don't need to buy a new skein of yarn to do that. So having a big range of things in my, leftovers of a quarter skein of this and a quarter skein of that can be helpful.
sometimes you need to swatch like the exact yarn that you're going to use. And that's
True.
the problem. Yeah.
But say I'm submitting a proposal to a magazine for a design I want to do, like they're going to have some influence over what yarn I end up using in the end. So as long as I use something that's similar to what I think would work for the pattern, then it doesn't need to be exactly the perfect yarn, I feel like, for that. So I'm happy to do a swatch just to get a concept idea out there. And then I'll, probably swatch again when I'm making the final item using the exact yarn.
And how do you organize your stash?
Mine is by weight.
Yeah, mine as well.
By weight and by, did I buy it or did I dye
it? Because you're dyeing yarn and you're selling it. So do you have like separate yarn for sale and then, or do you use it and just sell from?
I tend to keep those separate. So I have like experimental dyeing that I do that I'll use myself, or I'll do specific dyeing for myself for projects. But I try to keep my yarn for sale for the shop in a sort of a separate location.
And then you go like next to it and you're like, I really want.
I know sometimes I'm like, oh man, I really want to use this.
So good.
I mostly organize my stash by weight, but I sort of also have categories of, I've always overbought for garment projects, and especially now that I'm designing, and sometimes if I'm designing a garment, I'm going to do, I think my last sweater, I did 12 swatches before I actually cast on. So I tend to design on the needles and play a lot before I get to my final concept. So I never want to run short on a design project. So I tend to buy a lot of extra yarn. And now I'm accumulating quite a stash of, well, I bought 8 skeins and I only used 6, and I've got 2 left over from another project. And I feel like I sort of keep the leftovers as sort of a separate category, even if they're whole skeins. That's a different category than, the things that I bought that I might want to use someday for something, but I don't have an exact plan for, or even if I bought them for a specific project, like if they're not just leftover skeins from another project, they feel different to me. So they're sort of separated out.
Yeah, I can relate to that, Jen. I tend to keep leftover yarn from my published work separate and keep them in the bag with the swatches in case I need to do something with it. So I have like an unused whole skein pile. I usually categorize them by colors because color work is my big thing, and I always like to, mix and match neutrals with vibrant colors. So color separation works for me. I do have a lot of leftover yarns, and usually I do a lot of gift knitting using leftover yarn. I make small like holiday ornaments or little amigurumi. And if you crochet, crocheting is a great stash busting because it goes so fast and you use up yarn so quickly that I enjoy crocheting to reduce my stash.
I try to organize it according to weight, like you, because it feels like when I need some yarn, I will initially go for a certain weight, but I don't have enough space. Like it's quite a large, it's like your IKEA, it's also IKEA's
Yeah.
squares. So
Yeah, the big
it's
cowlick shells. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
so it's quite big. So you put a lot of them, like all the DKs are in one box. So I can't really organize it by color. And also I like the color comes to me, like I see it one next to another, you know, I just mix and match in my head. Do you also have project bags that just lay there and you need to clean them?
Yes.
Yes.
So I have a fair number of project bags. I've accumulated a lot over the years, and especially now that I'm designing, my project bags now are all full of the left, like whatever is left on the skeins from the end of a project, and maybe even the needles that I finished the project with. And the project is done, and it's just like 2 or 3 balls of leftover yarn, and the needles are sitting in a bag so that I can remember, like, oh, I needed to weigh that skein of yarn to know how much yarn I used, or like I want to remember what size needle it was that I was working on that project, so I left it in there. And now I just have all these bags that definitely, like, that should be my spring cleaning task, is to empty out all my project bags that each have, you know, a quarter of a skein left in them.
And do you know the tags of all the yarn, or the, you know, the
Oh, I totally should
Yeah, the
keep
ball
those together.
bands.
I know what they are, but they are not with their ball bands.
yeah.
Yeah, I've known people to lose lose their needles in like an old project bag, and so they go buy more, and then they start cleaning out their project bags and find that they have, like, you know, 10 sets of the same size needle.
The leftover bags of yarn that I inherited from Kevin, some of them were still on the needle. So
Oh my
I do have
gosh.
needles too. Sorry to throw you under the bus, Kevin.
Wow, not
How
only the
much?
yarn, but the needles to go with it. Just finish the project.
Yeah, no, you need to really, really suffer through this project to just throw it away with the needles.
To just give it all away. Here,
Yeah.
take the whole thing.
Don't want to see it anymore.
In terms of project bags, I do have a lot of bags. That's all my bags are in a box, and I never use them. So maybe I should downsize my project bag stash.
Yeah, there you go. That's what you need to work on.
I don't have project bags. I use boxes.
Yeah, that's not I've not been bitten by the project bag bug. Most of my knitting career, I've been rather monogamous with my knitting, and so it's usually right in front of me on the desk. Working from home, I don't travel with my knitting very often. I have some for like knitting socks when I'm, you know, on the go, but you know, no major project bag investment. So when I'm finished with something, if I want, I kind of have to clean up after myself because it's all right in front of me. It's like, so I rewind the little ball and put it in a little, you know, my little extra bag, which I also keep organized by weight. So if I wanted to do some, you know, smaller scrappy project, I have it all organized in that fashion.
It always feels to me like a box, a carton box with the things, you know, it has the shape, you can close it, because project beds, I don't know, it's like I feel like it's thrown inside, and then I'm always scared that the stitches will go off the needle or something. And you know, in a box it's just in place, and so it always feels to me safer.
I have a couple of big bags that I tend to carry around if I'm going to a knitting group or going out to knit somewhere other than my home. So I have, you know, my big bag that inside it has another bag that has all my needles in it, and then has another bag that has all my notions in it. And then I can throw a project bag in there too. And so I like having the project bags so that I can sort of, I mean, I will just throw a couple of projects in there and then I end up with this giant tangled mess because I have a large open bag with tons of stuff in it. So I feel like for me, project bags help keep things from getting contained and tangled, or keep things contained, not getting tangled and messy. That doesn't mean I'm always good about actually doing that. That's just the intention.
It's the intention.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to our first challenge building block. So let's talk about the colors. When thinking about cleaning and colors, so I came up with 3 different families of colors. Well, one approach will be the primary colors, right? If we talk about clean colors, so primary colors, the red, yellow, and blue. So that would be one color palette that you can use. And then when I typed in clean colors in Google, then I found out that there is such thing, and I just put it here, that a clean color is a color that has very little or no black or gray added to it. So I guess that's a really neon, vibrant colors with no grays or blacks. So there is such term, clean colors. And then I went for the, so that's just an example what I put here. You can use like any clean color that you want. But then there was another type of palette that I was thinking of, and that's the colors that represent cleaning, which are usually, you know, the greens, blues, like, I guess it's like hospitals use these colors, and you know that you can come in and you feel like, okay, this is a clean place.
There's so much overlap between all 3 of them, so I can make up a story to use any of them.
Okay, with the primary colors, you have, you know, the 3 basic, you know, red, yellow, blue. But the idea of clean colors being the absence of that additional dark color to help tone it down opens that up into your secondary and tertiary colors as well.
Yeah.
So you could easily have a palette that includes your oranges, your purples, your greens, that absent of those in anything that tones it down. So you have just the brightness of those just basic colors.
If I think about like my stash, because you know we want to use our stash here because it's spring clean. So I would say that like the clean colors, I have none of them. Like I don't ever use vibrant neon colors. And primary colors, I don't know why, but I have like, I don't like them together. So I guess I'm gonna go with a third one.
Can you go back to the image, the first slide with clean bottles, cleaners? Okay.
You want this color?
Well, again, they're very bright. There's nothing, there's no aspect of those colors that tone it down.
Yeah, that's the clean color.
Anything that brightens it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are the clean colors, definitely.
So you could always, you know, think of the different shades of those colors, the idea of adding white to it to sort of lighten it and make it more pastel, which of course kind of gives it that spring lightness that you want from cleaning. So you could go with different bright, you know, how bright and how light of the color you wanted to go as you're also looking at that palette.
Yeah. So what would you consider scrap? Like when do you put it in the scrap bag and not back in the closet like with the stash?
If it's still a full skein, it goes back in stash. That's how I work.
Right.
If it's anything less than a full skein, then it becomes part of my scrap pile.
I would say that not so much, because some skeins are 100 grams skeins, right? So if it's like 60 gram, that's a good skein for me. That's not a scrap. I would say when I start to see the, the yarn starts to be loose, then it becomes, for me, it becomes like scrap.
Yeah, I never really thought of it, but I guess maybe if it's less than 1/3 of a full skein, I consider it scrap rather than leftover.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a category. Like, to me, like, the term scrap is almost like, am I going to use it for like provisional cast-ons, or, things that I don't have any intention of keeping? Am I going to use it as a lifeline? Am I, like, is it basically trash yarn? And I've got to have a very, very small amount for me to like not consider that I might use it for something. Like, even if I've only got like 30 yards, like, that could be an embellishment on something. That could be something that I work into one of these projects. Like, so I save almost everything. And it doesn't go into the same bag as, the full skeins. Like, anything that's less than a full skein is separated out. But I'm not sure I would consider it scrap unless it, like, I've almost completely out.
I have like tons of these like jars with this. Yeah. So that's the provisional cast-ons. And I just need to hold the, the sleeves or something.
Right.
Have you ever knitted a scrap project?
Yes.
It's a beautiful scrap project.
Oh yeah, that is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. So this is the City Limits sweater by Tanis Fiber Arts. It was a lot of fun to make, and literally I just took a bag of leftover fingering weight yarn.
Can you show it?
Yeah, you want me to get it closer?
Yeah.
So that's a bag of scraps.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's a bag of fingering weight leftovers. I had anything from like half a skein down to like 20 yards, and I just held 2 yarns together at a time. And when I ran out of one, I dropped it and picked up another, or when I got bored, I dropped one and picked up another. So it's marling. It's always 2 colors. And I just brought different colors in and out.
I don't like stripes, but here, like when you do it marling and just scraps, it's just so much better than just stripes.
Yeah. This was a lot of fun to knit, and I used up a ton of leftover fingering weight yarn, and now I have a fun sweater, and it's fully reversible.
That's so cool.
So
is it garter stitch?
It's stockinette.
Stockinette?
So stockinette or reverse stockinette.
So cool. It's really fun.
Did you mix different kinds of fibers, or is it mostly wool?
It's mostly wool, but it's different. I think there's one wool silk blend in here. Some have nylon, some don't. Some are single ply, some are plied. All different kinds of structures and things, but mostly wool.
I often would do things like, playing around with different stitch patterns and to see if I wanted to turn that into a shawl or something. But Joji Locatelli put out a pattern recently called the Collective Shawl, which basically it's just this asymmetric shawl, but uses like little leftover sock yarn in brioche. And so you get sort of, all you need is a single skein of a basic color yarn. And then you just have these little pops of brioche where you're using just little bits of yarn, and then it separates it back and forth. So it's just a lot of fun to do that, and just to grab just little bits of leftover sock yarn to throw together in a sort of a scarf-like shawl. But apparently there's a lot of stuff out there like that. Like a lot of Stephen West stuff could be done with just leftover, bits of stuff from his other projects.
But not so much, because you have to repeat. He has like one skein of each color. Otherwise, you're going to use a lot of colors, and it's a lot of colors anyway.
Well, I mean,
Which project
a lot of his like painted bricks patterns, basically call for, you have 20 grams of this or 50 grams of that just to create a stripe of that color. And then you just, because it's, you do have to have like a main color that goes around it, but picking up a basic black or a gray or something like that can make it really cool.
Yeah, right.
And he does a lot of like marled, like patchy projects too, like his penguonos and those kinds of patterns that are easy to pick up little bits of leftovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like the penguono. I just recently became aware of that one, where you basically hold together yarns to reach a bulky weight. I mean, which could be like several skeins of yarn at the same time of your leftovers, just to create a section of that. Vertices Unite is another great one for kind of using up small parts, small bits and pieces as well.
I'm just concentrating on the cat behind Jenn.
Oh, yeah, like a little extra.
Yeah.
Ollie wants to participate.
The classic distraction.
Yeah, it was just so soft, and it just came out. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna look at some elements that we can use for our next challenge. So, because we're talking about scraps and small stuff, I try to find things that are, small and scrappy, but cute. Like this little bottles of wine of, the hats.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cute, And friends, those, I don't know. Have you ever made tassels?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I haven't. And pom-poms also. Never made them.
Yeah, I've never been into tassels and pom-poms. I very seldom add them to any project that says that that's sort of an aspect of it. I'm like, no.
Me too. It feels like such a lot of work, for each tassel.
A lot of work.
I mean, oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's like too much yarn. Like I don't.
Yeah, a lot of yarn.
I don't need this
what?
in my. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I feel like they're on like shawls a lot, and often like I will add onto a shawl to make sure that like I use up all the beautiful yarn that I have, and also I just like bigger shawls, so like I'll just keep knitting and add another repeat of the pattern or whatever to make sure I use up all the yarn, and then I don't want to like save a whole bunch to turn into tassels at the end.
Yeah.
It's just something to like entertain your cats with. So no.
And there goes the shawl, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the little sweaters, I saw a lot of them like online, and I really don't understand how can you make this. It's talking about fiddling, right?
Yeah, talk about fiddling. Ugh.
I've taken classes where we've knit mini sweaters as a way to teach construction concepts.
Yeah.
So, you knit a mini drop shoulder sweater, you knit a mini yoke, you knit a mini set-in sleeve, like just so that you can understand how the construction of the different elements goes together.
But is it like mini, like this mini, or is it like a baby
like,
size?
Like this big?
Yeah. But it's
so like,
what can you learn from such I mean, everything is just one stitch. You don't get the whole idea.
You can get the general idea. You won't get all the little details, but you can a general understanding.
I guess there are a lot of little things you can do with the scraps. These are just an example and small things that you can do. Now let's talk a little bit about designing with scraps. We touched it a little bit, but I've never thought about like how I would design something for scrap, like as a scrap project. So did you do it? Like, did you have something like that in mind?
I think that it can be hard because a lot of the time people see a design and they want to do it in exactly the colors that the designer had. So if you just said, well, I did it in random scraps from my stash, there's no way for someone to replicate that. So I think that's where sort of the idea of some of the like advent calendar projects and things that, you know, where you can use mini skeins so that you can say, okay, I bought this set of 20-gram mini skeins and did it out of that, then that's repeatable. And then if somebody wants to do that out of scraps from their stash, they easily can. But it's hard, you know, I think there is pressure to make sure that your exact colors are something that someone else could replicate.
Yeah. But when I look at the sweater behind you that you made, I guess you can like select a color palette or something. It doesn't have to be like the same replica of whatever someone was doing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, now I find that I guess I've really never thought that people go in that direction because I never have. I have never looked at a pattern and said, well, what yarn did they use and what colors did they use? I look at the structure of it. I look at the instruction of it. Is it, you know, does it have the nature of something that I can do and the structure of something that I enjoy? And then I decide what colors and even what type of yarn. I've done shawls that, you know, are meant for lace, and I've done them in worsted and loved the process and loved the result. So I guess I'm just very fascinated by that. I have to stick with exactly how the designer did it themselves as opposed to using that as a jumping off point for using what I have.
Go ahead.
Like magazine publishers and book publishers that have said, like, in, you know, some of the older times where magazines were more prominent in how patterns were sold, that when a new magazine was going to come out, they would contact all the yarn stores and say, okay, our cover sweater is going to be made in this yarn in these colors, so go stock up because this is what people are going to want to buy. Like, that has been a thing that has driven sales in the industry in the past, and there is a pressure to, people do want to make exactly the same thing sometimes.
I think all of us are experienced and adventurous knitters, but if you are just beginning, a beginner knitter, you typically want to stick with the recommended yarn and the colors, as you have no idea what else you can do.
Yeah, I guess when I was starting off, I looked at recommended like yarns and colors and was like, that's out of my price range and I can't get a hold of that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use what I can get a hold of and what I can afford. I was a novice. I never considered that a single weight yarn and a 4-ply yarn have different characteristics and you couldn't use them interchangeably. You know, I was like, yarn is yarn, use it.
Yeah. There's a color, I can use that.
Exactly. I mean, I understood about weights and that, you know, a fingering weight and a worsted weight really don't work well if you're trying to interchange with them. But if you have a whole bunch of worsted weight yarn, just it's worsted weight, go for it.
I think many people, they want to have the pattern. They want the pattern to tell them what to do, and they want to knit. Don't bother them with all the details, you know. Just tell me what to do. Yeah, so they don't even want to select colors. They see, I want this one,
and they don't want to swatch.
Oh no.
No. That is true. They don't want to swatch. I want it to fit though.
Yeah.
Designer. And then blame the pattern when it doesn't.
Yeah, stupid pattern. let's say that I'm telling you that now we're going to make like a sweater. What techniques would you select that you think would fit a scrappy sweater?
First thing that comes to my mind is kind of what Jenn's sweater is like, using marling techniques where you're holding a couple of yarns together. So 2 fingering weights to create DK. So DK makes it a little faster sweater to knit, or even 3 strands. Oh, let's go crazy, to go towards the more, almost a worsted. And then you can, as one sort of runs out, you just add a different one. And so it constantly is shifting and changing, but it's not abrupt.
Right.
And you use a lot of scrap.
I was thinking of intarsia, because intarsia you can like use just blocks of colors in several places and
sort of take the Stephen West approach, use modular knitting, where you knit a particular shape and then you just add to that, and you constantly are shifting the shapes to fit the structure that you're trying to create.
Yeah. Kind of like a granny squares approach.
Kind of like granny squares. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking I would design something that stitch definition doesn't really matter. So like bulky weight, and if one stitch is really fat and the other stitch is skinny, it doesn't really matter. So maybe garter stitch and multiple strands held in double, or triple, quadruple.
Oh man, let's go another level.
One thick yarn of like everything.
We're knitting now with rope.
hand knitting.
I feel like doing something where you have like Scott's shawl, where you have one color that's sort of your main color that's going to tie it all together, and then putting scraps in with it in different places can work really well with, a bunch of techniques, whether you're doing intarsia or fair isle or brioche, or like, just having that one sort of unifying thing to like tie it all together so it doesn't feel so random, and then adding your scraps in with that.
I feel that my mind starts to, get ideas, and I'm like,
You're
stop,
designing.
stop. It's not for real.
Like already she started.
Yeah.
She's already started her next sweater pattern.
Enough with this. So I'm gonna share my screen for the last time.
Deep breath, everybody. Here comes the sweater.
So the challenge, the theme is, of course, spring clean, whatever it means to you, right? The story is going to be whatever you want, like spring or whatever it means to you. And the challenge is to make a knitted scrapbook page, like not a whole scrapbook, but scrapbooks, right? And I saw that in some places they are called art journal. You just take some kind of images or colors and cutouts and just put it all together and to tell your story. You can use whatever you want, you can use also images or colors or text or whatever, and add some knitting to it somehow, however you want. Do you like it? Do you like it?
It's a challenge.
It's a lot of little things. It's not just one object as we like the mask or something. Just take a lot of little things and tell a story.
And if the audience wants to participate and use their stash, they're welcome to do so. Yeah,
I think that's a good one for the audience, for stash busting. So that's that. We have the challenge for the next episode. So if anyone wants to join, please do. We have a Ravelry group with the episodes. For each episode, we have a board that you can put your challenge if you want to participate, and join us and comment and subscribe and like and let's see what we make. So yeah, bye for now.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.